Well, hey, thanks for joining us this morning. Like Ryan said, my name is Josh, and it's so good to be with you. Hey, in contrary to the song that we sang at the beginning, we've all heard this phrase that your actions speak way louder than words. And most of the time, I think this is true. Most of the time, I think we need our actions, and we need things to display and show people, for the commoner, for our neighbor, for people we pass in the grocery store, for the people we work with, whatever that is. I think actions do speak louder than words. But as we move closer to someone, as we move deeper into a relationship with family, with friends, I think that ratio of actions to words starts to shrink a little bit. And it's not, actions are way more important than words. I would argue that words are either even or just below actions. Because the words of the people closest to us matter, and they mean something, and they carry weight. Think about the people that you're closest to. Think about the people that you're closest to that have shared words with you. They have the power to inspire you, to push you forward, to lift you up, to encourage you. But equally so, they have the power to tear you down, to steal your confidence, to destroy everything that you've built up inside of you with just a few small words. It's the words that people say that stick with us, that we remember, that shape the way that we see ourselves and see the world around us. But it's not just the words that are said. A lot of times it's the words that are left unsaid. And there are some of you in the room where you would give anything to hear your parents or a loved one, maybe it's your father, say the three words that you've never heard them say, or you're longing to hear them say, I love you. Or I'm proud of you, or you're enough. And if in you that sparks some sort of emotion, if in you feel like, yeah, I long for that, or I could understand why someone would long for that because they've never had that or they want that, that's the reason why we're stepping into this conversation on the weight of our words, because the weight of our words matter. And they shape the way that we see the world, and the way that we communicate to other people plays a big impact on how we see and how we live in this world. Now for me, words really matter, because a lot of my job is communicating. I'm on stage saying words. Communication and clearly communicating is important. So getting that right is a really big deal. So in my home recently, some of you may know this, we just recently had our third child, Franklin. He's about a month old. And we expect this, and everyone should expect this, when you have a child, you lose a little bit of sleep. And that doesn't really start factoring into about like 2 to 2.5 weeks into it, because you're running on adrenaline the first week, and then it starts to wear on you. And a couple weeks ago, I just remember I'm sprawled out laying on the floor, playing with our older two sons, giving them whatever energy that I have. And my middle son, who likes to cause a little bit of trouble, picks up the remote and he hits the big app button on the remote to turn it on, Netflix and Tubi and whatever it is. So he turns it on, and our TV is a smart TV, and it has voice recognition. So normally what I just do is I say, all right, TV, turn off. But in the moment, so I'm doing this, I'm like, okay, we're not watching TV right now. And I say, Alexa, turn off my TV. And nothing happens. I'm like, oh, that didn't work. Oh, it's because it's not Alexa. Amazon, turn off my TV. And that doesn't work because Amazon doesn't work that way. Alexa is Amazon. Then I say, hey Siri, turn off my TV. And it doesn't turn off because Apple doesn't have TVs. And I look at Des and I say, we are losing our minds. The fourth try, I say, hey Google, turn off my TV. And it turns off, and it finally turns off. And we deal with the problem. And if you're in this room and you're like, hey, I'm a little concerned that you have these listening devices in your house, I just want to reassure you, 90% of our conversation is about dinosaurs and snacks, so it doesn't matter. Listen, you're welcome to listen. You're welcome to listen to all of our conversations. But isn't it true, I joke about it, but isn't it true that when we don't use words correctly, when we use words inappropriately, we don't get the intended response? We get a consequence that we don't actually plan to do. The TV doesn't work, but that happens in relationships too. When we don't use the right language, we can tend to be hurt, or when someone else uses the language that we don't like around us, we tend to be hurt and we tend to get wounded, and those things stick. And for all of us, whether it's a parent, a coach, a teacher, a child, a friend, the words that they say to us, over us, at us, and about us They stick and we remember them and they shape the way that we see the world around us. They hurt sometimes. They are in our memory. I remember in third grade, I went to the old Jefferson Elementary building, which is now the ECC, and we were playing pickup football at recess time. And again, third grade, this is a long, long time ago. One of the captains of the teams looked at me and another kid and said, I picked the other kid because that kid's fast. And I'm like, well, what about me? Obviously, 20 years later, I'm not still hurt by it, but it stuck with me. And for you, whatever that may be, our words or someone else's words to us stick with us. And I think one of our fatal flaws is that when we think about the language and the communication that we use with other people, we tend to forget that our words carry or can carry the same weight that those words carried in our lives. That our words have the potential to damage and wound just like anybody else's could to us. And if you're in the room and you're wondering, why is this relationship with my kids so hard? Why won't they talk to me? Why is every conversation with my spouse in a position that everything I say rubs them the wrong way? I feel like a lot of those questions we run into in our lives, and it's why we have to talk about it and enter into this conversation and address the weight of our words and where they land with the people who are closest to us, the people that we have real relationships with. So in this series, we're gonna talk about three dynamics that determine what people hear regardless of what we say. Because we want to have real, intimate, close relationships with the people in our lives, with our friends, with our family, with our kids. So we need to move in this direction specifically in our words. And if you're a Christian in this room, if you consider yourself a Jesus follower, this is a little bit of incentive. I don't think that this is optional. I don't think this is something that we can just take or leave. I think this is something that should be highly prioritized, and it's essential to walking and following Jesus. Because Jesus stepped onto the scene and he gave this grand command. He says to love your neighbor as yourself, to love your neighbor as I have first loved you. And he passes this on to his disciples and the people who were following closely, and they took it and they started to spread it. And the Apostle Paul writes this down and he translates this into his own words. This is how he says, I want you to love your neighbor. Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love. And this word love can get a little muddy sometimes for us. This word love, we can take and make it our own and kind of adapt it and adjust it. But what Paul is saying and what Jesus said is love is defined. Love is direct. Love has these parameters around it, and this is the way that you should walk in. And I want to invite you into that. And then for me, I read this and I say, okay, walk in the way of love. And for me as a Christian, as a Jesus follower, I'm walking in the way of love, and sometimes I get this mixed up with my behaviors. I'm like, why do I do what I do in light of what I believe that leads me to do what I do? And if that's confusing at all, it's confusing for me too, which is why I want to just take a step back and clarify this a little bit. Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we have to do select behaviors that we've been invited into? It's because love is direct, but love is not just for love's sake. We don't do good just for good's sake. We do good because of what Jesus did for us. I'm convinced that Christian behavior is a response to Jesus. Not the thing that we start with, not the thing that we earn God's favor with. It's a response to Jesus based on who he claimed and proved to be. We don't love our neighbor to earn God's approval. We don't behave a certain way because that's just the blind faith in the rules that we have. We don't do a certain thing or behave a certain way to force that on other people because it's what's right. And we behave a certain way because God, who created this world, who created us, and gave a specific intention for the way that we're supposed to live our lives, sent his son Jesus, who claimed to be the Son of God, and give us a window into what God intended for this world. He said, if you do what I am inviting you into, you will be living a part of God's kingdom. And he didn't leave it there. He stopped and said, okay, now what happens next verifies all of this. And he died and rose again, doing something that no one else has ever done, and validated the fact that he was God's son and that everything that he said leading up to that could support the fact that this is the best way of living, that submitting to him, submitting to his way is the way that we trust and have faith in him, that we take up these behaviors and that we adopt them for ourselves. Which leaves us with one decision. It leaves us with one thing that we get to do, not two. One, the first one, the thing that we get to do is we get to choose whether or not to follow Jesus. It is every single one of our decisions to say, I'm gonna follow Jesus and what he says, or I'm not going to. That's our decision, but we don't get to choose what it looks like, reacts like, or sounds like. We don't get to tailor what the way of love looks like for us. We don't get to say, this is kind of what I want to make it. We don't get to kind of wrap our own bow on it. We follow what Jesus says about it. And if we try to do it ourselves, that's our pride getting in the way of saying, you know what, my way is better than Jesus' way. And Jesus, you can kind of follow my lead, and I'm going to pick and choose. And Jesus says, no, follow me, submit to the way that I want you to live. And when we submit to the way that Jesus invites us to live, when we say, Jesus, I'm gonna follow your way of love, who wins? I do, you do, but most importantly, the person on the other side of you wins. Because we start living in a different way, we start living like Jesus. And then Paul takes this idea of love. So he takes this grand idea of love, this narrow, this direct, this defined way of love. And he says, I'm gonna pinpoint this specifically to your words. Again, not optional. Here's some direct rules on how we're gonna do it. Stephen, you can go ahead to the following slide. He says, you can skip that one. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. He starts by saying, this is the negative. This is what you've maybe been doing. This is what you need to stop. Stop any unwholesome words from coming out of your mouth. Unwholesome means distasteful. It means offensive. It means rotten. It means bad. He says, your mouth is a gate. Be the gatekeeper for your mouth. Don't let any unwholesome, he doesn't say a lot, he doesn't say some. He says, don't let any unwholesome words come out of your mouth. Now, for lots of us, we justify this. We justify saying, okay, yeah, I'm not gonna let any unwholesome words come out of my mouth, but sometimes I just gotta be honest. Sometimes I just gotta say it the way it is. I just gotta tell the truth. And we know what we're actually doing. We're just making observations and we're not really taking into regard what anyone else is saying. The truth is honesty is making sure what you say is true. It's not saying everything that's true. If you walk around and you just make observations all the time and you just say all the true things and everything that you think comes out of your mouth and your gate is wide open, you're probably not gonna have any friends. You're probably not gonna have a job because that way of living doesn't make sense for any of us. No, what being honest means is that when words come to our mind and they're thinking about coming out of our mouth, we say, okay, I need to make sure what is true, but I still need to keep the other person in mind. I still need to think about them. I think another maybe example of us disregarding our responsibility for not letting unwholesome words come out of our mouth is, well, this is just me, it's my generation, we did it differently. As if doing it in a different generation validates your criticism on the younger generation. If you're an older generation coming from a younger person, you wanna know the fastest way to kill someone young, their hopes and their dreams and desires? Unvalidate them, treat them like children. Act as if they don't know anything with your words, put them down. If you wanna steal all their confidence, do that. But we're called to not let anything unwholesome come out of our mouths because it's not about you. It's about the person on the other side of you. Don't let any out. And what I love about Paul is he doesn't stop. He doesn't stop by saying, don't let any out, just the negative, just the negative. He leads us in a direction. He says, stop this, but start this. He says, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. That your words are a building block. You think of a conversation with someone that's close to you as a construction site. And when you're at the construction site, the conversation that you're having, you should be building someone up according to their needs, according to what they need. We should be considering the other person and being helpful to them. And you may hear this and be like, can that really work? Isn't that just unproductive? Isn't that soft? That won't get anything done. If I try to parent that way, my kid's gonna stick his finger in an outlet and you're gonna walk over and be like, hey, good job, you're doing okay, you'll be all right, that's fine. Or if you're an employer and someone shows up, one of your employees shows up on a Friday and you're like, hey, thanks for showing up today, so happy that you came in, you're doing a great job, but that was the first day that they came in and you're just like being nice to them. That doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work that way, but that's not what Paul's saying. Paul is not saying we just need to be nice. Paul is saying we need to build them up. We need to encourage them or fill them with courage. It's not just this gentle, soft, unproductive nature. It's listening. It's paying attention to their needs. It's becoming a student of them. As James put it, it's being slow to speak and quick to listen. Something that all of us can probably factor into our lives a little bit more than we already do. And where I think, hit a roadblock in my life, I think sometimes this holds me up, and maybe this does too. I say, yeah, well, whatever builds you up, whatever's helpful for you. But what they need to hear is what I need to say. So what I have in my mind, they obviously need to hear. I have so much energy, I have so much enthusiasm. If I'm so inspired about this, well then what is gonna build them up, what's helpful for them is what I need to say. And this is how it often goes in my house with my spouse. We will be talking and she'll bring up attention. She'll bring up a problem or something that's going on and she invites me into it and wants a response from me. And immediately when she's like, hey, I have this thing, and my mind will be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons, 10 reasons, and things that we can improve or fix this problem. If you're a guy in the room, we're fixers. We have all these ideas. And she invites me in and I might share one of them. And she will receive it and feel encouraged, like, oh, that was helpful. That was good, and she'll have a little bit of confidence come into her, and then in my mind, I'm like, well, she accepts one thing, let me tell her my other 9, and then she'll get way better. This will help her through all of these things, so I start sharing one after another, and this is always when I find myself observing as I'm talking. And I'll watch that little bit of helpful turn into defeating because it's overwhelming. And I focus more on what I needed to say rather than what she needed to hear. And it ends up being unproductive and sideways energy, and we actually don't get out of the tension, it just prolongs it because I'm more focused on that. And for many of us, we are more dialed in to what we need to say than what others need to hear. We're thinking about, yeah, I got all these thoughts and they need to hear it, so I'm gonna say it. And then we end up saying, and I end up saying, what is most helpful to me according to my needs. I say the things that I need to say when I need to say them, not according to what they need. And that's fine. For all of us, that's fine if we choose to do this. If we choose to say what we need to say, if it's more about us than it is about them. It's fine if we want to say what we need to say if it's more about you than the person on the other side of you. And this is where Jesus enters in and he levels the playing field and he says, yeah, but that's not how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. That's not what I did for you. That's not what you're supposed to do for them. He said, I set the example in dying for you. I am living in others first life orientation. And everything that I say and everything that I do and everything that I've taught, it is for the sake of other people. And you know what? This way of love, that's how I want you to parent. That's how I want you to spouse. That's how I want you to friend. That's how I want you to work. That's how I want you to be an employer. That's how I want you to do everything in your life with an others first life orientation. Paul goes on and he finishes his thought, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Everything that we say, everything that comes out of our mouth, everything that we choose to open our gate and let out should be for the benefit of the other person according to their needs. That's what love sounds like. That's what love should sound like coming from us, coming from every single one of us. And if you're a Christian, again, this is not optional. This is essential. Now, in the midst of this, we still have to enter into hard conversations every once in a while. We still have to say the things that are difficult to say or enter into some conflict. And the funny thing about entering into hard conversations is we know when someone else is talking to us and they care more about them than they do about us. We have a detector that goes off when it says, you don't really care about my needs. You're not really trying to understand. You're not really trying to seek out where I'm at. I know, but when someone does care about us, when they choose to listen to our needs, to become a student of us, to seek to understand us, we feel loved. We feel cared for. We respond well. And this is why our intent is as important as our content. That we, in communicating to other people, have to communicate that we care about them more than ourselves, that we follow in Jesus' footsteps. And if it sounds like I keep going back to this, if it sounds like I keep saying, well, look at Jesus, look at Jesus, look at Jesus, what did he do? It's because I am, because he set the example. And we never had to question where his heart was at. We never had to question where his heart was at when he was dying for us. We never had to question where his heart was at when he was leading us to say, if you want a full life, here it is. Do these things, behave this way as a response to what I've done for you, and see what it looks like. See how people respond to you. See how people respond to you when your intent comes through, that you love them and you care about them more than yourself. So to recap what Paul says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only, don't let any, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Stop the unwholesome words. Start building people up. The construction site of your conversations need to be built up one brick after another, which leads us into the first of these three dynamics that factor into every one of our meaningful relationships that we have in this world. And so often we just tend to forget it. We know this, but we forget it. Our words are not equally weighted. Your negative words weigh way more than positive words. We all remember the words that were said to us that were hurtful, that were harmful, that stuck with us. We probably don't remember any of the words that we said to our parents. And we forget most of the words that they said to us because their wisdom went in one ear and left out the other. And we couldn't remember half of what they tried to instruct us to do. But when your parents or someone meaningful to you engaged in the critical and the cynical, in the comparison, it stuck, and it hurt, and it weighed a lot. And we remember the time when we were compared to our siblings. And we remember the time when our parents seemed to disapprove of us. And we remember the fill in the blank when they were negative towards us. It stuck with us and shaped the way that we see ourselves and shaped our confidence. And what I want us to do, and this is important, is to acknowledge that, what has stuck with us, but more importantly, realize that our words carry the same potential to hurt and crush and wound the people that we love, our friends, our family, our kids. And we have to make sure that when we're speaking, we just don't think, okay, my word weighs a pound, and this word weighs a pound, and this sentence weighs a pound, and then we get lax, and we let our gate open, and out comes something that weighs 1,000 pounds. And what's said, or what's unsaid, destroys someone that we love, crushes someone that we love, and it sticks with them forever. We're not supposed to let any unwholesome words come out of our mouth. In fact, we have to counterbalance, because we're not going to get this right. We're never going to be perfect in this. We're trying our best to not let any out and only build others up. So we have to counterbalance the times where we make mistakes with the positive and the constructive. We have to load up on the positive and the constructive, to encourage, to fill with courage, to build one another up, to inspire the people that we love with our words, to tell them you're doing a good job, to tell them that you love them, to tell them that you're proud of them, to make sure that those support the times when we don't do a great job. And if you're a parent in the room or you lead in any way a group of people or individuals, if you want your constructive criticism to land, if you want your constructive criticism to make a difference, if you want them to receive that, you have to support your criticism, your constructive criticism, with positives. If you want them to lead the way that you're hoping they do, if you want your kids to act the way that you want them to, we need to prop up those hard conversations that are inevitable. We have to have hard conversations with the positive, with the encouraging. And can I just speak to the men, specifically the dads in the room? That if you're like a lot of men, words don't come easy. Words can be hard. Maybe you're just not very verbal. You don't say a lot. It probably tends to be easier to share the critical, the cynical, the comparison, because you part of your role is to correct and to lead and to make sure they're on the right path and telling your kids where to go and what not to do. But the odds are that those words come out a lot easier than the encouraging and the positive. That if you want to have a meaningful relationship with your children, you need to invest in insert positive. You need to make sure that the only thing that they're not hearing is that critical, of propping it up. There's this thing called the Lasada line that says we need 3-to-1 positives to outweigh the negatives. For dads, I think that's more 30-to-1, 50-to-1 positives to make sure that your children hear the negatives. And if your MO, and this is for everyone in the room, if your MO is to not share a lot of words and to be more critical, the odds are that you have some strained relationships. The odds are that you notice that my kids aren't really talking to me much and there's some tension, or my spouse is not receiving my words very well. The odds are that you lean more into the critical, more into the comparison, more into the cynical than you should. And there's gonna be some tensions there. But my encouragement, there is no time like today to call that person, have a conversation with that person. Not in a week, when you get to your car, and tell them, I'm sorry. Tell them, to tell the kid that you've never told before, to tell your kid that you love them. And whatever's going on in their life, whatever you disagree with, that you can look at them, that you can talk with them and say, I know this is hard, but I love you and I'm proud of you. And that might uncover some uncomfortable conversations that you gotta wade through with the tensions. But it's necessary because it's not about you. It's not about our preferences. It's not about our comfort. Our words carry weight, and we are responsible for the damage that it's done. And we have to take into account that our relationships are our responsibility. So there's no time like today. Our words are not equally weighted. Your negative words weigh way more than our positive words. And I think we can all agree that no one ever traced their deepest problems back to too much encouragement. I think no one can ever say like, yeah, I'm so terrible because, man, I was encouraged, and I was lifted up, and I was inspired, and I was in a good relationship enough to maybe communicate some of those hard things. No one ever complained about that. No one ever traces their problems back to that. And for some of you in the room, this is natural for you. You're so good at this. You're so encouraging. You're so loving. You do such a good job at lifting and building people up. Keep doing that. But if you struggle with words, if you tend to lean into the negative, if you stray away from the positives, it's time to get to work. It's time to lean into this conversation. It's time to start paying attention to our words and remind ourselves that our words carry weight. And we have the choice on whether to use them to wound other people and hurt other people, or be a gatekeeper and love other people really well. 2 questions for you to take and maybe just wrestle with as you leave this place. The first one is, where do you have work to do? What relationship do you need to get some work done? And who hopes you'll get to work soon? Who hopes that this isn't just another message for you? Who hopes that this doesn't go in one ear and out the other? Who hopes that you listen to this once, twice, 3 more times after this because you really want to care about your relationship with them? Who hopes that you'll get to work soon? Don't let any unwholesome words come out of your mouth, but only for what is good and helpful and what benefits the other person. That's what loving sounds like, according to the way of Jesus. Love to pray for you. Heavenly Father, this is a lot easier to talk about, a lot harder to do. I pray that, God, we would submit to your way of loving people specifically through our words, and that for anyone in the room that struggles with this, that it's difficult, that it's hard, that you would equip us with everything that we need. God, that you would fill us with the courage to have the hard conversation, to say, I love you, to apologize, to use our words to build others up and not get stuck on the critical. God, I hope that you are leading us and that we can trust in you, God, and that we eventually can see the fruit come in our lives from that. We're grateful for you. We love you. It's in your name we pray.